All right, fantastic, cool. Really looking forward to this panel. DePIN was very kind of, I think, like, had its narrative, had its phase, and it's true that personally I hadn't heard so much about DePIN in the past couple of kind of months, and so I'm really curious to hear the thoughts of the panelists here, because it's kind of, I feel like DePIN is what made, to a lot of people in my surroundings, blockchain tangible, real, because they couldn't see it before, but then with actual physical networks, they were able to see that a little bit more, and really curious to hear a little bit more from the panelists here today as well, what they see as DePIN being. So maybe, because it's kind of it's a longer acronym than we're used to, you know, NFT is three words and the like. So maybe you guys can just give your definition of kind of DePIN, how you got a little bit involved in this kind of more, let's say, specific space of the industry, and let's say a bit of background to yourselves, your companies, etc. And then we kick it off.
So my name is Patrick. I'm one of the founders of DePIN House, which is the leading distributor and service provider, especially for the DePIN space. And like the name DePIN called, decentralized physical infrastructure. It all is around building a network, not in a centralistic way, but using the power of community and get it done by the community, or better to say, with the community together. So in a sense, it's following the old OG crypto rule to going decentralized, but in a very, very practical way, which we are a lot missing in the Web3 space in general. So therefore, DePIN is the perfect example for real world use cases. And yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Thanks. I'm Gunjan. I work with Beamable as a Vice President of Product. Our focus is video games and related infrastructure. So I'll answer your question from that point of view. DePIN for us is having a decentralized base of stakeholders across the ecosystem of making video games, so that each of these stakeholders is empowered not just to participate, but to deliver value and to seek value back. It's meant to be all together. I mean, if you think about it, in some ways, it's a zero-sum game. Nobody wins, but also nobody really loses. And for us, the way we're thinking about it is to build this network out in a way that really incentivizes, one, long-term alignment, and two, overall scale and security for all the participants that are part of the ecosystem.
Pleasure to meet everyone. My name is Jess. I'm the founder and core contributor at Reform DAO. We do market making for projects, especially also being here for helping DePIN projects. Especially since they most of the time have sort of challenges with their tokenomics and of course most of the time inflationary tokenomics. That also brings me to the part, I think, regarding the question, how I see DePIN is a bridge between, I would say almost like Web 2 and Web 3, really making sure that real-world infrastructure will actually be centralized, decentralized, and that it actually will be made available for a whole big group of people to also leverage and gain on the infrastructure that they actually provide. That's how I see it.
Okay. My name is Denny Schmidt. I'm the co-founder and the CTO for Craycore. We have a natural disaster detection network built. And what is DePIN for me? DePIN is a new way to bring the machines to the blockchain. And I think it's a new world for the blockchain technologies. And we can bring safety and more features in the machine economy, and we can sell the data directly for the machines. We can bring the data for the machines to the blockchain or to other data buyers, and I think it's a good way to make more on the blockchain, not only a token or whatever.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, I really loved reading about Quake. I mean, it reminded me of some of the kind of use cases that I used to see, in the 2017 area that were like quite crazy in terms of like the way in which they would disrupt different industries. And it's like, wow, we can actually do things in the real world. One of the first ones as an anecdote was they were tokenizing shipwrecks in NFT formats to go and find buried treasure. And I was like, wow, this is super cool. And like looking at Quake, seeing the real use cases behind that is great. To kind of deep dive directly into it, and maybe question directly for you here, is kind of how do you ensure like reliability and performance when you're building using Web3 technology for something that, say, is crucial as what Quake is doing in the real world?
Make a little introduction over Quake before. We have Quake start on 2023 in the earthquakes that Turkey, and in the earthquakes have 45,000 people lost their life in the earthquakes, and we have thinking what we can do for save the peoples and give you more time in the earthquakes or in all natural disasters. And we have begin with the use case with earthquakes, and we have developed the device. That's the Quake core. You can put it on the wall, and we can detect it over the device earthquakes. And it's simple. It's like a fire alarm. When you have a disaster for earthquakes, the Quake core is giving an alarm, and we detected it over the Quake core Connect platform. And when 8 quakes in the area, example Germany, have the same alarm with we have in the earthquakes P and S rail. When we detected the same, we give on all devices in the network, example Germany, the device, and people can save your life. We not can say, okay, we give 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 seconds. The thing is, we will save 1 life or 2 lives or 500 lives. And when we can give people 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and you can go out the house, that's the idea over Quake core. And on the other way, when we have the Quake on the wall, we detected the data and we sell the data to oil companies, insurance, and governments. And yeah, that's Quake core. And what is the way we use Web3, and we have the access to the backend for Quake core. We use for the authentication NFT to make the connection, and we give the community the rewards for the Quake core device back when we have sell the data. And we have application in the App Store. You can download that, and we have here rewards for the Quake core miners. And yeah, that's Quake core when we use the Web3 way. Yeah.
Understand, thank you. And so, I mean, in another light, I mean, it's not necessarily kind of life or death, but gamers, when they have poor user experience, poor internet, they'll make sounds like as if they're dying. Maybe, Gunjan, you could give us some like of your perspective around, how do you ensure, with gamers as like they're, excruciatingly, painfully addicted to having the right level of scale, seamless experience, etc. How do you ensure through kind of DePIN that they maintain the experience that they get with other games that, you've been affiliated with Activision, Blizzard, etc., that they get that same level of experience in this world?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a crucial question, and one that we get often. And what it boils down to is whether your network is reliable, whether it is available, and whether it is performant, which is to say fast enough, right? And those are very real concerns. There's 2 ways we are going about it. The fundamental principle is the underlying network needs to be abstracted away so that the user experience doesn't depend on the network playing any obvious role at all. So it's seamless in that sense. At Activision, when I was the director of product for Call of Duty, we had our own data centers. That game has 120 million console players, 200 million mobile players, right? We've got data centers all around the world, and we can afford it because every single game generates revenues in billions of dollars every single year. But when you can't afford it, you still can utilize DePIN to provide reliable user experience by utilizing enterprise-grade service providers. We call them bare metal server providers. There's folks like G-Core, servers.com, i3D, GameEye, they're specialists in handling high-performance game workloads. And what we are building out, case in point, is a consortium of these enterprise supply-side providers who are already specialists, and they understand very well how to handle these containerized game workloads with very specific performance requirements. So the piece that remains is for us to take their capability and to abstract that away so that there is uniformity in terms of how each one of these supply providers makes themselves available to the network and in turn to the studio. That's the piece we get to build, sort of this order booking mechanism. But because of the inherent nature and scale of the capability that these providers already offer, it automatically abstracts the DePIN away and maintains the player experience seamless.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that concise answer. And before we just move on to Jess and Patrick here, I just want to keep with both of yourselves, Denny and Gunjan, on the side of kind of comp here, the token. You mentioned a little bit about kind of creating an NFT. Are we past this kind of token model of incentivization, or are there other ways in which you're incentivizing both of your different user base to be using your applications?
Well, I think gone are the days when you can incentivize primarily on tokens alone. I think we've all heard of play to earn, right? That's pretty much done, thank God. I'm going to use this term you may have heard of, Web 2.5. It's not Web 3 traditionally. It's not Web 2 traditionally either. It sits in the middle. And what I mean by that is, this is a way of utilizing blockchain, the tokens, and the protocol design in a holistic manner to create blockchain as an add-on, as a supportive piece to the economies that might already exist. So if you look at Web 2 game design, when I was at Activision, what did we do? We are the game publisher. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars building the game. So what do we want? We want your money, right? So money flows, so talent flows from the publisher to the game studio. Money flows from the player to the publisher. That's the fundamental value exchange. But where that leaves room for improvement or for innovation is when the player says, have you thought of this feature? What about that other ending? And we would get those requests. I was tied closely to the player insights group, and we would get those requests, right? And what Web 2.5 can do is to allow for creation of an economy that is in parallel to the publisher-led economy. One customer of ours that is doing this really intelligently, Mythical Games, you might have heard of FIFA Rivals, NFL Rivals, and what they're doing is the digital equivalent of what baseball player cards used to be. So if I own an NFT and you own an NFT and he owns an NFT and I want to trade my NFT and maybe buy the two of yours, they're utilizing blockchain to allow this trade, these transactions, multi-party transactions to happen. What's in it for them? They take a small cut of all these transactions, right? They do benefit, no doubt. And they should be able to do so. But what that allows is creation of a parallel peer economy. And you can take it one step further and allow for player-driven development, right? If you're part of a governance structure, if you're able to vote for certain features and what have you, blockchain now allows for that to happen more seamlessly than before. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Sounds very convincing. Thank you. Denny, do you have any thoughts on like how you're incentivizing people to use? I mean, if you need 8 of these devices for you to get, let's say, a coherent reading, how do you ensure that you get to that critical mass? I mean, just from an incentive perspective.
I think for the Web 2 and the Web 3, what's the difference for Web 2 and Web 3? I think we have one people that use the device normally. It's a Web 2 people. When we have a people that see, okay, we have Web 3 and more, we bring a lot of trust in the network, in the DePIN network. When we detected an earthquake example, we can say, okay, that earthquakes, we have typed the informations in the blockchain, and we have saved the data. When we have an infrastructure that's on example Web 2, we don't can say directly, okay, the earthquakes in the area is really trusted. And I think in the DePIN space, we bring more than safety and more trust in the data for the Web 2 and the Web 3 peoples. Yeah, that's
awesome, appreciate it, thank you. So let's, of course, bring in Jess and Patrick here. You're not just here to sit down and look pretty. Fantastic. So, just to you first, I mean, so with Reform DAO, I mean, tell us a little bit more and on the topic of incentives and governance, right? I mean, market making infrastructure in its own right, you know, has the right infrastructure there, but you've added, let's say, this DAO-driven component to it. Can you talk to us a little bit more about, how those liquidity models operate with regards to what you're doing and how that intersects with the whole kind of DePIN world? Really curious.
Yeah, very good question. So to start with, I think it's very important for everyone to also understand what market making actually is. So market making in itself is whenever people interact with an exchange, when you get, for example, incentivized with tokens to use specific devices, collect data or anything like that, you want to be able to either sell them or when you want to speculate, you want to buy them. There's an order book on the exchange and those order books need to be filled because when they're empty, you're not able to buy or sell. We as a market maker do fill these order books so that everyone can have a comfortable trading experience and, well, that the project also has sufficient liquidity. So that is, well, market making in a very short way. Then when it comes to, you know, us as Reform being different than other market makers is indeed by having a DAO structure. This is very different than to traditional market makers who tend to do it for like their own gain and like for the shareholders to make money. Where we want to sort of mitigate that problem because that also reflects on the value of the token of a specific project. Bad market making or predatory market making can really harm and influence your project and your token performance. And that's why we mitigated the core problem by filtering out or removing the shareholder part and actually introducing the community part, where everyone can leverage on the value that's being created with market making by having active participation through the token of Reform. So that's, you know, just in general how Reform works and how we differentiate ourselves. Another part to that is that we're very transparent. We make sure that dashboarding and KPIs are met, but also that we strategically align. And that brings me to, for example, the side of DePIN, whereby every sort of industry within crypto has their own tokenomics, their own way of functioning, their own demand and ask. And, you know, you need to structure liquidity and the way how you structure these order books and other activities that you can do in a proper way that's also applicable to, well, this specific use case. And that's where I think, you know, the strategic alignment that we have with Reform really comes into play. You know, for any project individually, align with them on what their goals are and also how it realistically should be structured on the form of liquidity, on the variety of exchanges, so that you, as an end user and token holder, have a seamless experience when you want to buy or sell something. So that's, you know, I think also then getting to the DePIN side, what we saw and what I mentioned earlier already, is that, yeah, there was like a very big element when it still comes to inflationary tokenomics. I'm really glad to hear, for example, also from Gunjan that, well, that's being leveled out by, of course, the revenue being generated and the rewards that are given out. And I think that's, you know, where we should go to, sustainability in, well, token performance. And, well, that, you know, ties also into the market making on how we structure that liquidity and then, yeah, make sure that everything is managed in a good and proper way, for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a question for both of you, Jess and Patrick here. I mean, how do governance and community, I mean, play into infrastructure deployment? And we haven't really discussed, and it's rarely discussed, kind of the risks of too much democracy when we talk about kind of the deployment of these type of networks. Do you have any thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, why we structured in the form of a DAO is, of course, what I explained before already. But I think the main thing here is that we actually structured a business whereby a lot of people can participate by holding a token and vote actually on what is happening with revenues being generated or even like investments being made in like a variety of potential investment opportunities. So I think that's where, for example, our token model comes into play, whereby 65% of net profits that we generate is being used to buy back the token, and 35% is being used to build more treasury, and that treasury is actually actively being used to provide more liquidity to the overall cryptocurrency industry. Again, making the trading experience for everyone more seamless. And that's, well, our goal, and I think also the governance part really comes into play, whereby that 65 to 35% ratio right now can be structured differently when people think it should be different. When they say we want it 50-50, when they say we want to make a change or build a new product that's also related to market making. And that's where the whole, like, I would say, decentralization / governance part comes into play for Reform. But where I also think that especially running a market making entity, it's very important to still maintain a solid hybrid structure, because the bigger decisions are still being made when it comes to revenue distribution or anything like that by the decision makers, which is the token holders, but the operational side of things is still being managed by a day-to-day operation or like company. Because if you don't have that, then you should vote on, well, every trade you're going to make for market making, which is not going to be very efficient, of course. So I think that's where the sort of structure in terms of, like, as I said, hybrid structure comes into play, having the bigger decisions on the side of the community and the token holders, and also on the other side, the operational side, still in the form of a company. And I think that's where, yeah, the perfect combination should be, and eventually where we as Reform also want to move to get more and more things towards that decentralized side, more governance, more democracy, but as you said, you cannot start with something and then just think that it will run well and automatically by a decentralized community that does not have any affiliation with each other. So that's that.
Patrick, do you agree? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think you have to look on this topic of governance and democracy in a few different ways. So it depends on what are your goals of from your company. So there is not the one way you can go. You can do a lot of things. And from a practical user side, we're seeing basically three main functionalities. So one is very sneaky and a little bit cheap, but it is also very valid, and that is to use the governance as a marketing tool. You want to build a product for the community, with the community, so it makes absolutely sense to include them in the decision-making process. So therefore, it's a strong vehicle to ensure and to give the community the feeling that they are really important for this matter. That is on the one side very nice and neat, and you can use that. But on the other side, you also don't want to lose the control of the governance process, because especially in the beginning of each company, you have to decide what you want to do. If you hand all the decisions out, the ways where the decisions are formed are a lot more long, and you can't react to fast things happening on the market. So that's just one part you can't give away out of your hand. And then the second part, there are a lot of decisions from partnerships or liquidity or financial side, which you want to decide in the beginning, so that you can shape your route in the future in a proper way, and not just hoping that the community is on your side on this matter. So that is something you have to look after, and which is very important for the companies to look in it. And it really depends what is your goals. Do you want to raise money? Do you want, or did you already raise money and that all is no topic for you? Then you have a lot of flexibility. The third way you can look on this is, which is a very practical side we're seeing in a lot of companies, is regarding the lawsuit. So it's a structure to get out some of the regulatory sides out of the country you want to operate in. And that is mainly one of the functions, the people using DAOs, to build it up in a different country, have a foundation there, and so use the lawsuits, especially in the crypto space, of a different country, and not of, for example, in Germany, because we are very restricted here. So we see in kind of the end way between the user and the companies, D3 functionality mainly used. But if you want to build it very properly in the beginning, then you have a lot of functionality later on, like what already was said. So therefore, every project who wants to dip into the site and thinking about the DAO structure should really spill in their thoughts in the beginning, because all of the decisions you are making in the beginning will have really, really high impact later on in the journey. So it makes absolutely sense to work with an established partner and to get these insights, because a lot of things are just not very, very obvious and are really hidden down the line.
Fantastic, great, thank you. I mean, you work with a lot of different stakeholders, and I think actually DePIN as a whole has to work with many, right? I mean, from large enterprises to regulators, as you mentioned, startups, community members, and the likes. Which stakeholder, in your belief, is providing the most friction today for, let's say, the adoption of DePIN?
Yeah, therefore it's quite tricky. So we have on the one side the regulatory side. DePIN is quite new, and it's quite new in general in the Web3 space, and the Web3 space is new, and a lot of things there are just not regulated. We don't know where we're sitting in the law system, and that is one thing we have struggled right now very deeply. We have to argue what is this? What is this product? So therefore that is very easy. We see in a lot of countries that it's just not defined, and we hoping and seeing that in the whole development process of the lawsuits regarding crypto, DePIN will be also have his own suit, and hopefully the government will will see and understand the differentiation between DePIN and other projects. So that obviously the legal side is always a friction. Then what we're also seeing is, because this area is so new and a lot of companies are popping up kind of every day, and they are not experienced. They are not experienced in the distribution of the products. They are not experienced handling the demands of the customers. So we have just the normal problems a new kind of product or company have, the lack of experience, and therefore a lot of friction with the customer, the delivering to the customer, and the process around it. So most of the ideas are very valid, and the founding teams are very motivated, but there are so much things you have to think about right and left, and that just goes into friction with different parties.
And the one providing the most momentum, I mean, that's the most positive? Is it the community itself? I mean, who is really leading the charge?
So I think the two parties who are most profiting right now are the startups, because you have a tool building use cases which were not possibly the years before DePIN. So you have so much more possibilities to build out ideas and to think about the approach to build out ideas that is very, very strong. So therefore, it's no surprise that we're seeing a lot of these new companies popping up, because it's very easy to tackle the approaches which were just not possible before. So the startups are very promising on this. The second part is for the users as well. It's very easy to get the stake inside the data economy and to get the stake of a company. In the traditional markets, you can buy a share of a company if it's listed, and you can go this route. But if you have a private company, it's a lot more hard. And in the DePIN space especially, you can have this tiny share of this whole network and get your stake into it, and that is very, very easy and tangible for the people. So in the crypto world, where everything is very high level, very infrastructural, and very hard to understand, DePIN is a way to understand all the mechanics on a more base level and in a more hands-on way. And I think, therefore, it's very important for the general Web3 direction to go in the DePIN direction in showing the real cases you can build with it, because it's just more easy to understand a tool like Quakecore than some next layer one solution which provides a lot of functionality but not especially important for the people by themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate that. And so, I mean, you know, I think the follow-up question to that, and I think this one to the whole panel before people start falling asleep, is kind of what's stopping mass adoption in terms of, and when I say mass adoption, for me that's kind of synonymous to enterprise adoption in terms of they are the ones that hold the keys to the people, to volumes and the likes. Gunjan, maybe from yourself to start with, as you worked quite predominantly with one of the largest largest enterprise in the gaming sphere specifically. I mean, what's stopping Activision Blizzard from adopting DePIN, and then of course to the other panelists as well. I mean, if it is so cool and great, and I really do believe in it as well. Why are they not adopting it?
Why fix something that's not broken? Activision releases a game every year. Specifically, the game I worked on, Call of Duty, has been the top 3 game in the history of video games. Each game every year will make between $1.5 and $2 billion every year. Why fix what's not broken? So there is that inertia. There is the desire to continue doing what's been working well. Why innovate? And when you do innovate, classic Harvard, right? You've got a cash cow. You're innovating. You don't want to kill the cash cow. That's crucial. Otherwise, you've just blundered yourself into, whoops, that was $2 billion, and now it's not that much money anymore. That's the reason a lot of corporations that are successful will not, that's why they will not innovate. The other reason is there's a learning curve involved. There's the need to learn the ecosystem, the terminology, the procurement. I mean, DePIN is a physical infrastructure network. Activision has its own data centers. Other people use capacity from AWS and whatever else. So there is that too. You know the existing parts. You know these guys are doing a good job for you. So there is that natural aversion to change, right? And I think if I could add a little nuance, the players in the DePIN space themselves will, despite their best efforts, accidentally act against their own best interest. I said this earlier, DePIN is a zero-sum game. Nobody wins, nobody loses. The crux of that is the design of the protocol, so you have to make sure everybody's incentivized well, and the protocol is designed for long-term scalability and security. If you get that wrong, somebody is not winning, which by definition means they're getting left behind. And we've seen that happen despite people's best efforts, Aether and so on and so forth. So there is that too. I think the industry itself has to undergo progressive maturity.
Thank you. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts?
Not to be fair, I think Gunjan is right on the whole part of why fix something that's not broken. I do also think, and that's of course sort of natural evolution, which you also see now with stable coins coming. It's a different thing, but the natural evolution that it will bring is that while the whole traditional banking system, as everyone knows it, is of course challenged. And I think that is an opportunity in this case, for example, for a Tether that did not exist for I think 10 years ago or something, I don't know exactly. Which is now like a real player making significant amount of money and actually challenging this traditional infrastructure. And I think that is something that, these big corporates are not always taking into consideration because they're comfortable on their island making money and not thinking about the rest. While there's a lot of innovation happening, on the panel in the form of DePIN, trying to undermine this power, so to say. And I think that's, something to keep in mind always as any sort of corporation, which I also think they do, but at least they don't want to, indeed, make changes to something that's working for them at this specific moment.
Makes sense. As we kind of close up here, we have 2 minutes, so the lightning round can begin. Just like 20, 30 seconds each. I mean, let's project ourselves 5 years into the future. 2030, I know it sounds daunting, but 2030, if DePIN had to be integrated into one industry, which one do you believe that is going to be? Maybe Patrick and Sam.
Yeah, I think one of the more obvious things, and we're also seeing a lot of projects surrounding that, is the compute power. So we will need more infrastructure in this way. There's a very, very high need. And if we're thinking about the development in the AI sector, it's not surprising that the needs will not end, but they will accelerate. So therefore, that will be happening in the future. And like always, there will never be only one approach. And the one approach is being Google, building a data center and pouring millions, billions inside that. But that's just not the only approach you can go, and not the only approach everybody can go, because money, not every company has the same money than Google. So therefore, you will have these solutions who want to build up edge solutions which are very, very direct to the consumer, generating a low latency and getting this compute power outside there. So that will be one main part, which we also are already seeing right now. And I can't imagine a world where it will not be more incentivized and used in the future as well. The second part is all about the research part and the data economy. There are so much fields, you need a lot of data, and the data also makes only sense if you can build up a context for it. Like, data is nothing worth if you cannot compare it to different data sets and have this holistic view. So to build up these networks from a commercial or non-commercial side, it will be crucial to build up huge networks around the world. And nothing will be more easily in this regard to go through the consumer route, because to handle all the different governments and going over institutionals will be such a long process that it's just easier to reach out to the consumer. So in this regard, I would say that data in its general for research purposes will be a lot of use cases in the DePIN area.
Thank you. You picked two there, and your 20 seconds stretched very far. So maybe I ask specifically the 20 seconds to the other panelists, because we're already over time. Thank you.
Very quickly, I would say telecom and cloud. They're naturally distributed anyway, and it's not hard to see where blockchain can be additive.
Yeah, well, if you truly believe, I think, in decentralized networks and, like, for example, Bitcoin mining and also AI and everything, I'm fully into computing power, because that will be the most thing needed, the biggest thing needed in the near future.
Yes. I think for DePIN, for the next years, I think in the banking sector, for all machines, what we have in the infrastructures in all companies, we can find a good way to machine economy and save the data and bring this on the Web3 level. Yes.
You were supposed to say disaster management, man. It was like a home run. No, I'm joking. Thank you. It's a great way to end our panel. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for our audience for being so attentive. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you.